Bright, executive coach, and specializing in burn recovery. I've been doing this for a while now, and this month, Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm focusing on burnout on all my platforms because I realize there's people who need help, need real help. And I think there's a lot of us who kind of know what to do in terms of we've done a bit of research, we've asked some friends, we've tried a few things, but we keep finding ourselves in this cycle. And my mission is to help you break that. And today I'm talking about burnout's effect on creativity. I think we're living in a world where technology is advancing, and it's advancing at a rate that is unprecedented. We've got regenerative AI. We can connect with each other around the world. Businesses are running almost automated nowadays. And us, in terms of our value, the question is like, how do we create value for ourselves? And creativity is one of the last remaining threads that we as humans can reach out to, whether it's for the purpose of business, whether it's for the purpose of recreation, whatever it is. But creativity and innovation is one of the last strongholds, should I say, about keeping us as valuable as we are. And there's a force that's extinguishing all the flames, right, of that brilliance and imagination. And it's a silent killer. It can build up over time. It sneaks up on you like a prowling lion, right? Sometimes you don't even realize where it's coming from, but you feel it rising, and it can be immobilizing after a while. But I want you to imagine for a second without that spark of creativity, where that creativity dims, when there's the well of innovation runs dry, and where the once vibrant colors of imagination fade into shades of gray, right? Everything becomes monotone. It's a world of lost dreams, passions, purpose, potential. And I don't feel like we're that far away from this world. I feel like there's lots of us who are actually on the precipice of this as we speak. There's lots of us walking around where the light is completely dimmed, where we can't see it at all. And people are getting really good at hiding it. People are getting really good at creating on the surface that everything is okay. But as soon as they go into the confines of their own space, we crumble. And we realize that there's nothing that's worth fighting for, that we realize that we haven't been able to protect ourselves. And so we've given ourselves completely to other people in something that can look like honor, in something that can look like giving, but it's actually sacrificing ourselves. As the phrase goes, keeping other people warm by setting ourselves on fire. And what I'm talking about is burnout. Now, burnout can look in many different ways to different people, but this is one of the results I've seen: emotional exhaustion, emotional detachment, where you don't feel like yourself anymore, where you feel like nothing you do matters. You feel overwhelmed by the smallest things. This can all be an element of burnout, and I don't think people are aware of this all the time. Even me, the first time I came across burnout as a topic is because I'm working with clients in the corporate space, and they keep talking about these experiences and how they used to be functioning in this way and living in this way, and they used to be the talk of the town and all this energy, etc. But all of a sudden, all the things that used to make them tick don't anymore. They've lost that creativity, they lost that imagination, that motivation, and they've gotten to this place where they're just on autopilot. And if this is you, then this is the episode for you. So today I'm looking at 5 ways burnout impacts creativity and innovation. And I promise you, if this is something that you're experiencing, it is not the end. It's not over. There's still ways to help you. The first one is reduced creative output. Okay, so it can stifle your creativity and innovation, like I mentioned before, but it leads you to mental fatigue, lack of motivation, and decreased ability to generate new ideas or solutions. It's a cognitive issue. I think a lot of the times people think it's just about the tasks, which are external, but it's actually also affects your ability to achieve those tasks, right? So you find yourself not being able to think as sharp. If you imagine your brain as a computer, you're just not as powerful as you used to be psychologically, right? Because you're exhausted. It can hinder your creative process as well and limit the capacity for innovative thinking. It actually takes energy to be able to think. My mum feeds there's a school in Sierra Leone where many of the children are orphans, and she wanted to support that school any way she could. And one of the main ways she does that is by providing hot meals. And obviously she helps building and everything like that. But hot meals are something that she was a non-negotiable for her. And one of the reasons for this is that we talk about how education is so important, right? But without us, with when you're hungry, you can't think. When you can't think, you can't absorb information. Now, I'm talking about hunger here, but if we're just talking about the thoughts, how your mind works, what your capacity to learn and to think is, if you reduce the ability to do that, then you can't be innovative. You can't see the connections between two separate points. And really, that's one of the things that innovation is. It's okay, it's not just a brand new idea, but it's how can we do this better? What is the actual problem here? And being clear on what the problem's solutions are. If you can't identify that, then it reduces your productivity as well. And a lot of you might be facing that. Okay, so the first way the burnout impacts your creativity and innovation is reducing your creative output. You're not as creative anymore. You might have writer's block if you're creative, right? The equivalent of that in any kind of way, shape, or form. But it doesn't have to be in a creative field like the arts, right? It can also be you as a finance coach um, or director or a architect or a mathematician. If you can't if you're reduced, if you're experiencing reduced creative output, it may be as a result of burnout. Number two, as ways of burnout impacting creativity and innovation, is diminished problem-solving skills. And I say that deliberately. Problem solving is a skill. It's your ability to look at a problem and understand it completely so that you can break it down into small parts, simplify it, and find a solution to the root problem. It's a skill that can be learned, but if you don't have the think in such a way, like I mentioned before, then your problem solving skills would be reduced, even if you do have the tools already. Even if when you're at 100%, you'll be able to solve a problem like this any way, shape, or form. When you're experiencing burnout, this stops happening, right? It can impair your cognitive functions and decision-making abilities. And it also makes it difficult to approach the problems with a fresh perspective. One of the things I've noticed, right? I live in London. One of the things I noticed that I like to use the bus instead of the tube. And part of the reason is because I can see the world go by, right? When you're on the tube, you're underground, you get from A to B. But one of the other reasons is when I'm above ground, I get to see people and buildings and all that kind of stuff. And you'll be surprised. I'll be just keeping my eyes open. And there were so many things that I noticed that I'm like, you know what I haven't seen is a shot for this. Or you know what, that person is really struggling with that. I wonder if there was a product that does that. And my mind starts going. I start to think about the problems that I'm seeing as I'm walking past or driving past people, and what it would be good to exist to be able to solve those things. And that's what entrepreneurs do, right? They see problems and think about solutions. But if you can't solve problems within your mind, then you can't do any of that, right? You can't find fresh perspectives. You can't find creative solutions. You can't think laterally. If everybody's thinking, okay, A equals B, you might come out and say, actually, no, it's actually a curve as opposed to a straight line. Maybe it's a wave. Maybe so. For example, one of the examples I give is problem solving, sleep. Okay, I am not being productive because I'm too busy, right? And I might say to myself, I'm too busy to sleep. Looking at the problem solving skills, I might take a step back and look at a new perspective and think to myself, I'm too busy not to sleep. Because if I don't sleep, I don't have the potential or the capacity to solve the problems that I'm facing in the first place. I'm actually making mistakes because I'm not sleeping. So I need to sleep. I need to prioritize sleep over the work, in fact, to be able to make the work productive. That's a change in perspective that I may not have if I'm just thinking normally. I need to think laterally about the holistic approach. And that takes capacity. There's I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's decision fatigue. And the idea is that through your day, you have a specific amount of decisions you need to make. I think it's called the spoon theory. If you imagine the amount of decisions you make in a day to be equivalent to spoons, you start the day with a certain number of spoons. And as you go through the day and you make decisions, it's like putting down a spoon. By the end of the day, you only have a number of spoons left, if at all. And what impacts your ability to make decisions, to hold as many spoons as you can, is your cognitive, your mental capacity, right? And that is improved by how much sleep you get, how much connections you have with other people, how much self-care you give yourself, how much boundaries you put in place to be able to protect your time. All those things help you improve your ability to hold a number of spoons, which you can cast out in terms of the decisions you make during the day. And we often don't realize that. And so we're here throwing decisions away. And then we wonder why by the time it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't even think anymore. You haven't even taken a break. You haven't picked up any spoons along the way, right? So it diminishes your problem solving abilities. Um, it can lead to narrow focus, right? So you may have seen this before. You're working on a problem and you're thinking so much about the problem, someone else comes by, has one look at it and says, oh, you missed so and so. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I wasn't doing that. That's because you're focusing so much on one small thing that you're not able to look at the whole thing, right? You can't see the forest for the trees. You're focusing so much in the detail. There's actually capacity involved in being able to look at the whole thing. So narrow focus, tunnel vision, and reduce flexibility. The idea of any kind of change will make you panic, right? The idea of being flexible puts you into chaos mode, right? All these things are things that can happen when you're under burnout, when you're under that prolonged stress. The third impact of burnout on your creativity and innovation is your negative impact on collaboration. So this is when you start to actually look at how you work with other people. So we talked about it before in terms of burnout's relationship with that. So when you're under burnout and prolonged stress, a lot of people tend to go inwards. So you're probably not going to tell someone that you're experiencing this if you don't have a close relationship with people. And sometimes it's only when you experience burnout that you realize you don't have the relationship that is close enough to share this with people, right? So you go inwards. You think to yourself, okay, I'm going to sort this out myself and then come out as this new butterfly. It doesn't happen like that. It's especially when we need it, connection with people, that we tend to walk away from it, which is something that I always say to clients, think about your personal and professional connections and how you can leverage that in your state of burnout instead of trying to do it yourself, because it ends up as a vicious cycle. But it can also impact your collaboration, how you work with other people. You might find that you're experiencing strained relationships. You're snapping at people all the time. You have zero patience for them. You can't communicate and explain how you feel or even understand how they feel. You find yourself in arguments a lot. You can't collaborate with teams or work with people. You don't want them in your personal space. It's impacting ideas. Everything seems to be like a tall mountain, right? It hinders your creative energy. You're not enjoying working with people at all anymore. It can lead to conflict, disengagement, like you just stop caring about it, and you lose that lack of shared vision even if you had it before. All these things are part of burnout. And now imagine you have two or three people who are experiencing that in the same team. the results are exponential, right? So we really want to start thinking to ourselves when we're working with groups of people, when we're thinking about our friends, family, and we start to see this change in behavior of ourselves or other people, start asking yourselves, is there something that's causing this? What are the triggers that have led us down this road? How long has this been going on? What am I actually experiencing here? And where is this coming from? And what is the reason for it? We need to start asking ourselves these questions. And as we find the answers, we need to start communicating with people, especially when we're in collaboration with others, because it's not just us that suffers when that happens, it's all of us. So the fourth thing that impact that burnout has on creativity and innovation is loss of passion and purpose. This is your motivation that's losing, right? This is where you get diminished enthusiasm. All the things that used to make you tick and have you skipping down the road like a Disney movie are gone now. Like you used to love driving, now you don't want to even get behind the wheel. You used to love spending time with your godchildren, but now you don't really, you giving them a call even, you don't even check up on them and see how they are. You used to love certain movies, but now you just watch it and it doesn't do anything because you know what's going to happen. You know, you used to like specific songs or people to be around, but now it doesn't make you tick anymore. You can leave there feeling just as drained as you were when you got there, when what used to happen is you used to turn that movie on, turn that sound on, meet up with that person, you leave energized. Now that same effect doesn't happen anymore. You're not even sure what you want to do with your life anymore. You're thinking, is there any purpose in it at all? Like, what's the point? Right? So it can diminish your enthusiasm, your passion, your motivation for creative work, right? And it can lead to the sense of disillusionment and detachment. We've talked about this a lot in these talks about this loss of joie de vie, joy of life, right? Becoming detached from your creative pursuits and not wanting to do any of that anymore, right? It can erode your sense of purpose and satisfaction, right? You get your wins. Like, well, this is something that happened to me personally. There was in a space where I found myself going through ups and downs and not feeling anything at all. Something incredible would happen, I wouldn't feel anything. Something terrible would happen, wouldn't feel anything. And for me, that was a red flag. I'm usually the kind of person who feels, right? Who has an emotional reaction to certain things, enough so much so that other people can feel that, right? I walk into the room and I'm a thermostat as opposed to a thermometer, right? Change the energy of the room as opposed to me adjusting to the energy of the room. But there'll be a period of time where I start to become a bit of a shadow to myself because there was something where I was feeling where I wasn't really sure what to do with my life anymore. Like, you know, you had disappointments, you lose your energy, um, you put your energy into all this stuff and not seeing the return that you thought you were going to get. Um, you know, people might disappoint you and you're not sure who to trust. All these kind of things start happening, and I start to question myself in this moment. And slowly but surely, it's like a little bits of color start disappearing from my vision until it starts just being black and white. And then all of a sudden, it just ends up being black. It's just darkness. And I sometimes use this analogy of in the movie Get Out, where he's in the sunken place, where he can see the little square of his life happening in front of him, but he is in this, he's just floating in this abyss where he can't feel, taste, touch, smell, hear anything. He's just experiencing things from a distance. That was me when I first experienced the real heavy types of burnout, and it freaked me out. And I had to really stop to myself and think, wait, how did I get here? What were the points in time which led me down this road? And then once I could identify those things was when I started to turn around and think to myself, okay, so how do I get myself back? And that journey back is what to this. I realized that I was the only person who was experiencing that. There were a lot of other people who were experiencing that too. The point where it's now ICD-11, International I can't even remember the acronym now, but International Center of Disease, 11th review. It's by the World Health Organization. It's recognized burnout as a specific disease that is on an international level, right? And that's to show how not alone you are if you're experiencing any of this. But the fact that it's so recognized means that there's things that are tested and tried that people can do to help get them out of it. and which is another reason why we need to communicate with each other, and we need to share our experiences and share what we get out of it. I spoke to someone recently who used to be an alcoholic, and he was talking about the power of Alcoholics Anonymous, not necessarily being that they come and give you solutions and strategies, etc., but it's just a space to share their experiences. And the fact that you suddenly realize that what you're experiencing is something that other people experience, and the power in that, knowing that you're not alone in it, can be enough for you to actually get up just enough for you to see what could be your route out of that experience. So just to recap so far, 5 impacts that burnout has on your creativity and innovation. Number 1 is reduced creative output. Number 2 is reduced problem-solving skills. Number 3 is negative impact on collaboration. Number 4 is loss of passion and purpose. And number 5, which is the last one I'm going to talk about today, is impaired risk-taking and experimentation. So one of the things about us as human beings is we have an innate need for growth. We have our comfort zone, which is the stuff that we are tried and tested. This is the stuff that we know, that we know, right? This is the stuff where you're comfortable with. You do this every day without thinking about it. The only problem with that is if we stay in our comfort zone for our lives, then we don't experience anything new, and we get bored. And which is the flip side of what people usually think burnout is. There's one type of burnout, which is where you have um, diminished capacity for a lot of things, right? So a lot of things are happening and you only have a small capacity. So you feel overwhelmed, for example. The flip side of that is when you have a lot of capacity and you only have something small. So you have a lot of energy, but there's nothing to put it to. That can drive you towards burnout as well. If you feel that you're bigger than where you are, but you only have this much of potential opportunities at your side, right? Or there's only one door that seems to be open, but you feel like you've got the capacity for the infinite. That can provide stress, which prolonged and undealt with leads to burnout as well. So the reason why I'm saying this is the step outside of your comfort zone is your stretch zone. The stretch zone is where you experience growth. And if you're not willing to take risks, if you're scared of success, if you have fear of success, fear of failure, if you have fear of rejection, if you have fear of all those things, it means that you're not going to take risks. And if you don't take risks, then you're not going to have new experience and experience growth. You will find yourself feeling stagnant. And connecting itself to the last point I made, you can also find yourself losing your motivation as a result. You start to accept the things that are around you, and you start to believe that nothing can change. One of the things that I was in a room yesterday when we were talking about triggers to burnout. What are the dominoes that lead you to burnout? What are the things that happen during the day that add to your experience of burnout? And one of the things that one of the audience members shared with us, which I'm really glad she did, is that she talked about how in that moment, she felt like there was no way out. She felt like she was trapped, right? And she said something along the lines of, there was nothing I could do. And one of the things that we have when we're in burnout is we start to believe. I know it sounds easy to say, yeah, but there actually was nothing I can do. I would challenge you, when you're starting to feel like that, to shift that sentence to, instead of there's nothing I can do, say, what can I do? I know it seems like an oversimplification, but I promise you this: if you continue to tell yourself that there's nothing you can do, there's something that happens in the brain where it like physiologically shifts to accommodate that belief. Challenge accepted, right? Thank you, Anthony. Definitely do that, because this is something I've experienced as well. There's a saying, I can't remember who was the author of this, but they said that those who believe they can and those who believe they can't are usually both right. There's something called cognitive dissonance, where our brain has to marry what we believe and what we're seeing, right? We usually say seeing is believing. Sometimes those two are related to each other and they actually form or create things. So if I say that I'm not going to get this job, subconsciously, without even knowing it, there's going to be little things that you're going to be doing to self-sabotage so that when you don't get the job, it's like, see, I told you I wouldn't get it. And what often happens if I say I am going to get this job, you'll find yourself looking at different ways to approach it, which is going to give you more chance to get that job. Because it's like when it's like the yellow car theory. If I buy a yellow car or I say yellow car to you, you're going to think about the yellow car immediately. It's like if I say don't think about a yellow car, you're still thinking about a yellow car. But then what ends up happening is when you start going out there in the real world and you get on your way to work, you start to notice yellow cars. Now, were the yellow cars suddenly on the road just because you said that? No, they were always there. But because your mind is attuned to yellow cars, now you start to see yellow cars. You not start to notice yellow cars because the brain is absorbing information all the time, right? But it's only when we decide what we're going to focus on that we notice the things that it sees. So when it comes to risk taking, you need to ask yourself, am I willing to take risks, or has the ability to take risks been knocked out of me? And is there something I can do to build that capacity up again? Because if we don't, we're going to stay exactly where we are. And if we do that, we're going to be finding ourselves unmotivated, right? Our belief system is going to be affected as well. We're going to be unwilling to take risks and try new approaches. We're going to be or experiment with unconventional ideas. Sometimes the exact thing we would think not to do, right? It can end up limiting our potential for breakthrough. And this one's really important. If you're not going to think outside of the box, then you will never get outside of the box. Ultimately, right? Sometimes we need to think about things differently to be able to find a breakthrough. And it actually takes capacity to do that, which burnout robs us of. It can foster a fear of failure, like I mentioned before. And perfectionism is also a fear of rejection, fear of failure. We think to ourselves, we have to be perfect to be able to be valuable. And anything less than perfect is not valuable at all. And the problem is we internalize that belief system, which works well if we are producing perfection. But the problem is the people who are perfectionists will never accept perfection anyway. So it's a vicious cycle, right? You'll be to step outside of your comfort zones, like I mentioned. So one of the things I'm going to talk about on another session is what is behind burnout. Like, what are the fears? What are the things that we believe which are leading us to be in a space where we can't put ourselves first, where we can't express ourselves properly, when we can't think laterally, when we can't do all those things. Often it's about the way we're brought up, our belief systems, how we think the world works based on what we've seen and experienced, the patterns we notice, and we start to understand that. And the thing that I want to ram home here is we can believe that certain things are facts when actually they're just our interpretation of things we've seen. The reason I point that out is if you look at someone who you take two people from completely different backgrounds, look at the same event, they will look at things completely differently, right? Because of what they've seen. If I am someone who's grown up in a impoverished background, and I've seen everyone fail around me and end up exactly where they were, I'm going to believe that that is the only route for me. If I grow up in an area where I've always seen people succeed, anything they touch turns to gold, I'm going to believe I can do anything. Now, take these two people and put them in the same workplace, in the same team, solving the same problem. One might find themselves self-sabotaging, so they can't even think of a solution to solve the problem. The other is going to find themselves skyrocketing through the system and find themselves at partner stage because they believe anything is possible and they're going to take on any risk, right? Which one of those would you prefer to be? if possible, to change your mindset, which would you be? And if you were to answer that you prefer to be the person who is able to take risks and able to fly through the ranks, then ask yourself, what is it about my mindset that's holding me back? That's hurtling me towards burnout, that is not serving me or anyone around me at all. Ask yourself these questions and try and get to the answers. All right. So just bringing that to a halt now. Today, we were looking at 5 ways burnout impacts creativity and innovation. If you have any questions as well, by the way, just DM me, ask me in LinkedIn, in YouTube, on Instagram, and let's talk about it. And one of the things I offer is a 30-minute call where we'll sit down and we talk about what exactly you're experiencing and how I can help. I run programs. I have limited capacity for one-to-one coaching. And there's also resources that I've developed to help people through burnout and help recover from it, but then also help avoid it completely. So if this is something that you find might be useful to you, if this is something you need, get in touch. Let's speak. If you're on LinkedIn, popping on screen this little here, the QR code here and here. If you want to book, and if you're on Instagram, just DM me and we'll talk. Last thing I want to say is to take action. There's an exercise I do with clients where we project into the future. Let's say, for example, you're experiencing burnout. Perhaps if you're watching this, it's because you are experiencing burnout, because something about this resonates and you feel that you're lacking in motivation, creativity, innovation, and you used to be the person who would be people come to for that. That used to be part of one of your skills, and you're losing that. You're starting to see things in grayscale. You're starting to lose the color and excitement in life. You're starting to feel heavy. You're starting to feel like you're dragging your past into your future. Whatever that might be your experience, you might be feeling like you're trying to get to the surface and you're swimming, you can't quite break water. You might feel like you're oversensitive to everything and you're snapping and your behavior is changing. You might feel like you're exhausted and you've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders for too long. All these things might be happening to you. And these are all experiences that burnout can give. The example I give to people is, what would this look like if you're not able to change this in a year's time? Imagine a year of experiencing this. What would that look like? What would that feel like? Would you even still be here, if we were to be honest with you? Because sometimes we're at the very, very end of our capacity for any of it. Like, what would it look like in a year if we haven't solved this, if we haven't been able to beat burnout, if we haven't been able to climb out of that hole that we've dug ourselves into? What would that look like if we stayed in there for the next year? And genuinely think about it. Today is the 23rd of May, 2024. What would it look like if you're still struggling with the same thing on the 23rd of May, 2025? What opportunities would you have lost? What friends and family would you have lost contact with by now? You know, what would be happening at work? What would be your capacity? Right? Think about that. And then think about, what would be the difference if I was to be able to solve this tomorrow? What would be the difference in a year's time if I was to be able to say that on the 23rd of May, I did something that would change that? I learned the tools to be able to get out of it. I found out exactly what the issue was that kept leading me down this burnout hole, and I was able to remove it. I found the barriers that were keeping me from the life I wanted to live. What would it look like if you could change it now versus if you were still struggling from a year's time? And then ask yourself, which one would I choose? Would I choose to stay here for a year and risk it affecting everything in my life and the people around me? Would I choose that? Because a lack of choice is always also a choice. And this is something I had to learn the hard way. It was actually my first coach that expressed that to me. The fact that you're not making choice is actually a choice to remain the same and accept what you're experiencing right now, even if it's not something that you want. That is what you're choosing if you're not going to do something about it. And sometimes there might be loads of things that are going on, but you realize once you start that journey to take yourself out, that there are certain things that I could do. So if this is something that you want to change now, I encourage you within the next 24 hours, you've watched this video, within the next 24 hours, get in touch, book that call, and let's see if we can get you out of this hole immediately, as opposed to still being here in a year's time. I'm going to end this session now so that you can start making that call, so you can DM me, because I'm quite literally here to help. That's what I'm doing. Like, I've been through it a number of times, and I do not want anybody else to experience what I experienced. So if this is you, get in touch and let's do something about it. All right.